Thank you everyone for joining this afternoon. I'm going to give a short overview of what the Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear initiative is. And I'm doing this on behalf of Rita Barnwell, the director for GAIN. So the Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear, as Mike Worley mentioned in the previous presentation, was a White House initiative that was announced in November of 2015. So been around for almost 2 years. The Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear initiative is really in response to the recognition that the United States is losing its place at the table in terms of global leadership in the nuclear industry. So there's a sense of urgency associated with enabling our nuclear industry to regain that status, that leadership status from a global perspective. So the overall mission of the GAIN initiative is to provide the nuclear energy industry with access to the technical, regulatory, and financial support necessary to accelerate commercialization of new advanced technologies in the nuclear industry. GAIN functions as an organizing principle, and you'll see this. You've seen this throughout the previous presentations for relevant federally funded nuclear energy RD&D programs. So you've seen the fingerprints of GAIN if you look through the CI&R work scopes, and I'll discuss that a little more in depth in a few minutes. GAIN also represents the framework for a public-private partnership that Mike Worley had discussed in the previous presentation as well. A large part of this public-private partnership is represented on this slide, where GAIN is focused on meeting 3 strategic goals with the Department of Energy and Industry, working hand in hand with suppliers and utilities, all at the same time to achieve the 3 strategic goals, which are leading global technology commercialization, which falls more in the wheelhouse of the Department of Energy and Industry, enabling global industrial leadership, which is in the realm of the suppliers, nuclear suppliers, and then utilities who deploy the energy innovations ultimately in the end. So what this public-private partnership is really focused on is accelerated commercialization, meaning that in parallel, all of these components work together hand in hand. So we have a constant feedback mechanism ensuring success at a more rapid pace, as opposed to the historically used, perhaps sequential model where we walk down a path and only turn around when we realize that maybe we've walked down an incorrect path. GAIN, the Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear, represents an entry point to the Department of Energy complex and all of the unique expertise and capability that exists within the complex. One of the difficulties in commercialization of advanced nuclear is recognized to be insufficient access to facilities and expertise that is very unique and very expensive to maintain. A lot of this happens to exist within the Department of Energy complex, and access to this is critical to forging ahead for a lot of these startup nuclear developers, and as well as the more advanced nuclear developers, and even some of the well-established reactor companies. So within the DOE complex, expertise and facilities exist involving modeling and simulation, cross-cutting design support, a regulatory component involving interactions with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and behind this is the recognition that a framework for licensing advanced reactors needs to be developed, base reactor fuel cycle R&D programs, and then a massive amount of experimental capabilities, and these things are reflected through the nuclear science user facilities as well. So GAIN enables facilitated access to all of these capabilities and expertise, and works hand in hand with developers and suppliers to bring this to bear on the problem of accelerating nuclear innovation. GAIN, as I said, has been around for roughly 2 years at this point. A small agile organization has been formed. An execution plan was written and has been shared. We've started to implement to address contracting issues. We've done things like implementing standard cooperative research and development agreements for use with the NE vouchers that Mike Worley mentioned. As GAIN represents a framework for this public-private partnership, as you might imagine, there's quite a bit of outreach that goes on. GAIN staff spend a lot of time at industry conferences and meetings. There are a couple of purposes for this. One of them is to solicit input from stakeholders in the advanced nuclear industry. The other is to advertise the availability of GAIN and the DOE complex for addressing advanced nuclear issues. Several workshops have been organized. Some of the ones I want to point out, in the summer of 2016, there were 3 technology-specific workshops coordinated along with the Nuclear Energy Institute and the Electric Power Research Institute to solicit input on private sector R&D needs to bring back to the DOE any R&D programs. Very simple questions are asked, such as what can the Department of Energy do to help you to accelerate your innovation to commercialization? We've also conducted, for example, 2 modeling and simulation workshops. One of them was focused on presenting to the industry what exists behind DOE's doors. The other was focused on listening to the needs of industry with respect to modeling and simulation. And then more recently, we've conducted a fuel safety research workshop with the startup of the transient test reactor in the background. Mike Worley briefly mentioned the voucher pilot that was conducted in 2016. This was patterned after an EERE small business vouchers program. What the vouchers are, very simply, are competitively awarded chunks of funding that are provided to a facility within the national lab or with partners to conduct work on behalf of the awardee. So if somebody needs, for example, to have a specific modeling and simulation analysis to give them some data on core neutronics or something similar to that, they can be awarded a voucher to have this work done by the experts at the National Laboratory. Behind this is the fact that these vouchers are great mechanisms for building relationships between the developer community and the national laboratories. It allows us to help facilitate innovation. It allows us to walk hand in hand with these developers and provide the necessary expertise and facilities to them. So this is really about establishing partnerships with industry. In 2016, 8 of these were awarded for a total of $2 million. In 2017, the program was expanded beyond a pilot to include $4.2 million awarded to 14 businesses with a much larger turnout in fiscal 2017. I mentioned the technology-specific workshops that we started with in summer of 2016. These were focused on 3 specific technologies: molten salt reactor technology workshop, one was on high-temperature gas reactors, and one was on fast reactors. We're looking for technical issues that DOE is uniquely suited to address and to discuss the R&D needs for these advancing technologies. Also out of those was the formation of what are called technology working groups, or TWGs. These TWGs perform a critical function for the Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear. They interact with us regularly. We monitor their activities. We sit in on their quarterly meetings, and they provide critical feedback for how to work with DOE program managers and to influence RD&D programs for the benefit of innovation in nuclear. So we do solicit information from these technology working groups, as well as many other groups of people. But in Specific to the technology working groups, we solicited feedback via workshops that I mentioned, interaction with GAIN staff on a continuing basis. The TWGs have also issued letters, request letters to the Department of Energy. GAIN staff has reviewed the draft work scopes for the existing CINR, and there are several areas, several work scopes that I'd like to point out that directly respond to these technology working group requests. First of all, under Reactor Concepts 1, Materials for Advanced Reactor Technologies, both RC 1.1 and 1.2 address molten salt reactor materials issues. RC 2 addresses salt behavior data collection for molten salt reactors, specifically 2.1 and 2.2 are related to characterization of molten salts. Also, RC3, experimental investigation of radioisotope retention, capability of liquid metal coolants. This is mostly applicable to fast reactors. RC4, advanced reactor development. RC 4.2 for fluoride salt cold high temperature reactors, and RC 4.3 that's more applicable, more directly responsive to all three TWGs. Continuing with those that are directly responsive to TWGs, fuel cycle 2, advanced fuels, 2.2 specifically is applicable to fast reactors. Mission supporting nuclear energy 2, nuclear data needs for nuclear energy applications relevant for all three of the technology working groups. Nuclear energy enabling technologies 1, advanced methods for manufacturing, again relevant for all three technology working groups. NEAT 2, advanced digital monitoring and control technology. NSUF 1, specifically 1.2, which addresses radiation testing of additively or advanced manufactured materials. If you look through the CINR, there are fingerprints for GAIN all throughout. There are several that I'm just going to highlight here that are of high interest to the GAIN community, perhaps not directly responsive to the TWGs, but still of interest. RC 4.1 is of interest to high temperature gas reactor developers. Fuel cycle 2.1 is of interest to all of them. Advanced fuels. FC3, advanced data integration for domestic nuclear safeguards. Both of the NEAMS work scopes are very responsive to the GAIN community and are of interest to the GAIN community. Nuclear Energy 1, cybersecurity, and mission supporting anyone integral benchmark evaluations are of interest. I do want to point out that the Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear may be able to assist universities with connections to these industry partners, because these as Mike Worley and others have pointed out, these partnerships are highly encouraged. So with that, I can take questions, Drew.
Thanks, John. We do have one question. As I mentioned before, if you have questions, please submit them to the question box on the GoToWebinar application. John, the question is, are there any GAIN funds that are available for universities?
What I would say is GAIN as an initiative does not have funds really for anyone. You know, obviously GAIN has an influence, and GAIN directs funds through the voucher program. Again, the voucher program is focused on having work done on industry's behalf at national laboratories. I would point out that as I said, the CINR work scopes have GAIN fingerprints throughout. So, you know, you would consider that a mechanism for distribution of funds to universities. And this is why we're pointing out these specific parts of the work scope that are responsive to the GAIN community.
John, we'll stay on the line for 2 or 3 more minutes to see if we get any more questions.
Okay.
John, are any blue sky ideas funded through the GAIN program or is it mostly applied research?
So GAIN is here to assist for any TRL. Generally speaking, some of the low TRL material science research is more in the realm of the nuclear science user facilities. It depends on what you consider blue sky. We see some fairly low TRL GAIN vouchers. What we like to see in voucher proposals is a very solid plan for commercialization and a very solid business plan. So, I would say that there's very little that's strictly out of bounds as long as there's a good commercialization plan that's well thought out.
Does GAIN have an interest in advanced manufacturing of concrete shielding?
GAIN has a general interest in advanced manufacturing of all types. Concrete is definitely going to fall into this realm. You can conceive of innovation definitely in any material production, specifically involving advanced manufacturing techniques.
How would university folks make use of GAIN to establish the connections to which you referred earlier?
So on this particular slide, you see a web address, gain.inl.gov. I would encourage people to go to that web address. There is an email link in there to email to GAIN. People are also welcome to contact myself or Rita. I would be at john.jackson@inl.gov.
Okay, John, thanks for your time. It looks like that's all the questions we have.
Okay, thanks.